The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told us that whoever builds a mosque for Allah, Allah will build for him a similar house in Jannah. And we know the great reward that will not only be gained, but rather will fill your grave after your death. Whenever someone prays there, whenever someone gives shahada in the masjid, whenever someone learns something in the masjid, yes, that will be something that you'll have on your scale.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you guys doing? Russel Brand is ironically a person who tried to rebrand himself after some serious allegations were hurled against him, and his left-wing base had actually cancelled him in a sense, and he had grown disgruntled with them to the point now where he's hosted a contemptible junkie in Tommy Robinson. He's hosted him on his platform to spew misinformation to his followers. Let's take a look at a clip which I found, which I thought was quite ridiculous, and come back and respond in kind.
And there's a march for Palestine, and there's thousands of Muslims coming out, and they're chanting, Q-bar, Q-bar, Q-bar. And I'm thinking, what are they chanting? So I asked my mate, what are they talking about there? And they said, well, 𝙗𝙪𝙞𝙤 was a Jewish tribe, in the time of Mohammed. And Mohammed, they surrendered, and Mohammed beheaded 600 of them, so he killed them all. And the leader of the tribe was called Qur'an. And this is and when I started studying Islam, and I picked up the biography of Mohammed by Ibn Ishaq, it's the most renowned biography in the world of the Prophet Muhammad. I picked it up, and when I read it, a Jewish tribe surrender, and then they pulled their pants down. Anyone who started puberty, they kill, they behead. But then he took the leader, Qur'an, he tortured him, he burns his chest. This is in the Islamic scripture. He sets fire to him and takes his gold, It's a pirate. The man's a pirate, He was a warlord and a pirate. But he takes his gold. After taking his gold, he then takes his wife that night, Sophia, and he takes her as his wife. It's not like she wasn't a willing participant in this, surely not, But so as all this going on, I'm seeing them chanting 𝙗𝙪𝙞. So I understood the hatred of the Jews. And then as I looked at the Qur'an, the Qur'an is 7%, no, Mein Kampf, Hitler's book, is 7% Jew hatred. The Qur'an is 11%. So there's a big problem here, Muhammad didn't like the Jews. Forget Israel. Muhammad didn't like the Jews. It's all in the scripture. It's in Muhammad's life. So when Israel happened, then I went to Israel. I don't know if you've been there, Russell. You've been there?
So we have heard this contemptible junkie, this uneducated buffoon, speak about Islam before, as if he's some kind of an academic. When I was studying Islam, I saw such and such as if this very famous, book of biography of the Prophet, which is the most famous one, most important one, and he pronounces it incorrectly. It's actually Ibn 𝙒𝙗𝙤, and he pronounces it Ishaq, which is incorrect. And then he mentions something within it, and claiming it's authoritative, the supposed torturing of this individual called Kinana by the Prophet Muhammad himself, supposedly, not realizing that this is a fabricated and inauthentic narration that no Muslim accepts, let alone considers as part of their scripture. And then you have this individual sitting there kind of smiling, trying to appease Tommy Robinson, trying to get a new crowd to be favorable to him, because as we mentioned, he's been spat out really by the left wing. He has grown to be disgruntled with his previous friends and compatriots and colleagues because of the very serious allegations of a sexual kind that have been hurled at him, and now he's rebranding as a kind of Christian guy and a clean guy, and this and talking about Christ and all these kind of things. That's all fine, well and good, but don't do it at the expense of Islam or the Muslim population. You can have whatever religion you want, but don't sit there and listen to a contemptible junkie providing no pushback whatsoever about issues which he's absolutely incorrect. So he mentions this about Kinana. We've already corrected him on this, and then he's got something else he has to say, which is that he then took Sophia and such. This is incorrect. There are many hadiths. In fact, one of them is in Bukhari, which is the most authoritative collection after the Qur'an, which clearly mentions that Safiya bint Huyay, who was a Jewish woman and who the Prophet ﷺ married himself. And he mentions that Muhammad hated the Jews. If he hated them so much, why did he marry a woman who's ethnically Jewish? And in fact told her many times how to defend herself against some other accusations against her. And that's another story for another time, relating to her Jewishness. In fact, he told her how to defend herself against that. But then he gave her a choice, and this is in many hadiths. In fact, one of them says, "Ikhtari, choose what you want. You can become Muslim, you can go back to your family. It's no problem at all. And in fact, if you go back to your family, it's not an issue. You will not be held to account. You will be freed. You will be freed." The Prophet told Safiya bint Huyay this very thing. And we've mentioned this before. So you're a liar. And we have our sources. And you have no sources. And you're an uneducated man. You haven't even done your GCSEs. So that's one thing. The other thing that should be said is that Brand himself now has come out and said the following. I will read this out actually. And he put this on his Twitter. He states, "Britain has 1,000 years of Christian history. Yet in just decades, it's been dismantled. Across the Islamic world, minorities have no rights. Once Islam is the majority, why gamble with Britain's future? Protect British people first." That's not something, a direct quotation from Tommy Robinson. These are the very words of Russel Brand himself. So let's take a look at what he says. He says, "Britain has 1,000 years of Christian history. But in just decades, it's been dismantled." And then he mentions Islam after. And someone could say the implication is that you are blaming Islam for the diminution of Christianity demographically in this country. If you look at the census data of this country from 2001 to 2011, from my recollection, in 2001, there was about 71 or 72% Christian people in this country. That went down and in 2011 and went down once again to some 40-something% in the 2021 census. These people did not convert to Islam. Yes, Islam went from about 2% to about 6.5% in population, but that's because of mostly birth rates actually. That's the reason why that increase has happened. So why are you connecting the fact that people no longer want to practice your religion with the religion of Islam? Why are you connecting the two things together? And then you start speaking about minority rights in the Islamic world. There have been times in 1,400 years of Islamic history where there have been collaborative and harmonious relationships with Muslims and Christians. We know that. For example, in Andalusia. And I'm sure he went to SOAS. He done a part-time master's degree for 5 years. I think he done one master's degree or something. It took him 5 years to complete, which is Brand. At least he done something with his life. That's how long it took him. And so I'm sure he would have read these kinds of things. He knows that when Umar ibn al-Khattab, even according to Thomas Arnold Walker, who's an Orientalist, in his book, The Preaching of Islam, went into Jerusalem, that he greeted everybody and he allowed everyone to practice their religion. That's the Prophet ﷺ's friend and companion, and the second after the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He knows that Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, according to essentially every source, after Jerusalem had been overtaken for 88 years by the Crusades, and Salah ad-Din had come back in, and after he had conquered the Crusades, he told those people, the Christians and the Jews, that they can come in at any time to this city. And the Christians were astounded because they thought that they were going to be dealt with in the same way as the Crusades dealt with the Muslims, which is to slaughter them and to destroy them. That didn't happen. Of course, there are times in Islamic history where you had the Muwahhidun, and I'm not even going to count this in Islamic history, but you have ISIS and you have radical factions. I'm not denying that. But there are also times, as we mentioned, with the Crusades, with the Spanish Inquisition, many different instances, and what's going on today in Christian and Jewish history, where Muslims have been at the receiving end of, all kinds of oppression from Christian and Jewish people. Minorities in general can be mistreated, and minorities in general can be treated very well. But making this generalization and talk about minority rights in a weak way, unacademic way, is not an argument. And why don't you be a man, Brand? Why don't you be a man? If you have these views against Islam or Muslims or whatever it may be, why don't you be a man and have a discussion with some Muslim about this? Why are you cowering behind the likes of Tommy Robinson, the contemptible chav, the contemptible junkie? Why are you cowering? Why are you trying to cower behind these more alpha figures? Because let's be honest, you're not that guy. You're not that guy. So now you're trying to appeal to the far right. By the way, your brand, the way you are, your temperament, and your disposition, the far right will never accept you because you're weak. You're a weak personality, okay? And you've easily been sold, and some people have been saying to you that you've been taking money from this source and that source. Maybe some people have been saying that they have something on you. And you know what I'm talking about. Huh? You know what I'm talking about, Brand. So don't come and talk about Islam. Don't go there. Yeah? Don't go there and start speaking about Islam. You're not that guy. You don't have that kind of a knowledge. You or your contemptible chav friend that you're trying to appease because you're trying to get a new base with the far right because you know you're nothing now to the left wing that you used to be. You've been rejected by them. And soon enough, you'll be completely irrelevant, by the way, Brand. You are going to be I predict you are going to be completely irrelevant. The left wing don't like you. The minorities, the Muslims don't like you now. And guess who else is not going to like you? The right wing and the far right are not going to like you because you are not their cup of tea. You are the kind of thing that they consider to be a parasite and the kind of thing that they consider to be a waste of time in British society. A weak man. That's how they consider you. And that's what you are. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Hey you, are you wasting your time on social media again? Your brothers and sisters in Islam Net from Norway are establishing a masjid, a dawah center. Establishing a masjid to convey the message of Islam is one of the best deeds a Muslim can do. There's a huge need for it in Norway. You know this and I know this. So that makes the reward even greater. So give generously and Allah Azza wa Jal will give you even more.